I've spent a long time making this podcast great, and all of that is in jeopardy with today's show. Ladies and gentlemen, Bo Brack.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cardinals, Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Locked On AZ Cards for now. I'm still locked out on my damn Twitter. Follow the podcast also at Locked On AZ Cards. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Hope everybody had their Wheaties this morning because their IQs are also in jeopardy. My former co-host, Bo Brack, now of the great PHNX Sports, PHNX Cardinals, joins me. First time back. He guilt-tripped me into this. I've joined their show a couple times. This is the least I could do. Bo Brack, thank you for making your return.
I forgot how much I had to fake laugh with you, getting back into it, kind of dusting that one off. And it is true mostly across the Locked On network that they are your first listen, but not the case with Locked On Cardinals. It's like maybe third, fourth, fifth. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
that hairline is really starting to go since you left. I don't know what Johnny's doing.
Man. I made sure to get it extra fluffy today to show it off to you.
Welcome to the team. So listen, Bo, Bo, one of my dear friends, and we've, we text all offseason. We don't hate each other, just for those that this was a business move, and we're still dear friends. And listen, I wanted to bring you on because we haven't talked in a couple of years on here, all joking aside, and a lot's happened since. And when, you look at the Cardinals now, you look at what happened this offseason up until this point, but then really let's start with 2023, okay? I want to take it back. We'll talk about free agency. We'll talk about what needs are still left. But give me your quick synopsis of what we experienced. Was it positive for you? Was it overwhelmingly like, wow, this is different? Or am I just, whistling Dixie, screaming crazy on this podcast?
Well, I mean, on the heels of 2022 is just the ship sinking. And Michael Bidwell, don't give him a lot of credit, but I'll give him credit for hitting the full reset button on the previous regime. And look, I mean, I think most owners, presidents of any pro sports organization would be forced into that corner, and they should have. And Michael Bidwell made the only decision that was, I think acceptable, and got rid of unceremoniously Steve Keim. I know he said he resigned, but I'm sure there went a little bit more into that. And then, of course, fired Cliff Kingsbury on Black Monday and pivoted to completely different general manager in Monty Ossenfort, who identified Jonathan Gannon the previous offseason as a head coaching candidate. And we can get into the tampering and stuff, but I think at this point, who cares? He identified Jonathan Gannon as a leader of men after a really successful run with his Philadelphia Eagles. And some people, especially Philadelphians, those insufferable fans, will say that he just rolled the football out on the defensive side of scrimmage. And you see that Jonathan Gannon's way more than just a guy who's kind of X's and O's and scheme. He's a guy that really kind of brings some juice to any organization he's a part of. I think him and Monty Ossenfort were in lockstep in cleaning up the mess. At this time last year, that was the assignment, Alex. It was clean up the mess, salary cap wise, get rid of the guys that are just holding on to the opportunity probably never deserved as far as being on NFL rosters and, high draft picks that they were selected in, and figure out who wants to be there. And along the way, they cleaned up. They got the cap in a good spot for this upcoming offseason. And then, of course, stacked draft capital with the little assets that they had, and then continue to chip away at the culture. And I think that they've really kind of set the foundation for a rock solid culture, right? DJ Humphrey said it was culture shock, not just a culture shift. Yeah. And I think that Gannon doesn't believe in momentum, but I think the direction of this organization from Monty Ossenfort to Jonathan Gannon, and it's enough because these are guys that are kind of mountain movers, not to sound too, lame and corny, but I think they're moving pretty considerable size weight in an organization that was held down by their predecessors.
Yeah, it's tongue in cheek, the phrase, if he or if she wanted to, she would. Michael Bidwell wanted to finally and did. I mean, it seemed very simple. And like what Monty Osford has done is in one off season and one full season, hard reset in a way that Steve Keim never wanted to or never did in his 10 years as GM. And it was something that it's the breath of fresh air, seeing it. Listen, you know very well, you and I would go back and forth a lot, but Cliff Kingsbury, I'm not his number one fan. I never thought he should have had the job, whatever it may be. Jonathan Gannon, week one preseason, steps on the field with that headset. He looks like a head coach. And that's something that we never really saw from Cliff. He was kind of the babysitter. And Jonathan Gannon came in, he's not a massive dude, but he demanded and commanded eyes from second one. And you can't fake that. And I think that's one of the biggest shifts right away. And then, throughout the season, I'm sure that, you had glowing reviews for Drew Petzing's offense. I call it the big boy offense, where it's like you run the ball, you run play action, you highlight the tight end, and you keep DBs guessing with the utilization of play action. They were top 5 in rushing this year, or top 10 in rushing this year. It's like, it's not hard when you have a guy with the acumen between his ears to do it.
Right.
So what do you think about the actual gameplay this year, regardless of who was at quarterback?
Yeah. I mean, just real quick about your point about Keim and Monty Ossenfort and Cliff versus JG's, you're seeing, guys with actual plans and preparation where, like I remember talking to JG going into his first week, and I asked him, what's left as far as the game plan, like how are you going to approach challenges and stuff. And he said, we're going to go over that on Saturday, and we've got meetings on that and how we're going to approach, when we're going to throw the red flag. And he threw the red flag one time in the season, but he wasn't ill prepared. I mean, they were prepared for everything, where I felt like the previous regime, especially the coaching staff, was like, it had to happen to him first. And then they're like, oh, this can happen to us. Like, okay, we're going to have to pivot. We're going to have to self-scout a little bit, where I think this organization is always self-scouting itself and trying to make sure that they're ahead of the curve instead of behind the curve. And that starts, that's the front office. That's the coaching staff. But as far as within the season, you saw, an underman roster fight and claw and try to compete, but you saw just the disparity of talent against any team that they went against. I mean, they weren't favored in any of the games this year. And, but you saw a team that didn't care about that. And I think that started with Jonathan Gannon putting, forth a good plan each and every week, and they followed the process, and people bought into that process even more so than the results of the game. And they're not naive to it, Alex. I mean, they're not naive that at the end of the day, they're going to have to win football games here going forward. But this year was just setting those processes in place that when you get more talent in the building, which they're going to do with double-digit draft picks and some of the guys they've signed this offseason, that you're going to see, the floor raise, and that those players that are bought in with a maybe higher talent level win football games.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's the phrase that I used more than any this past year was proof of concept. That's all that it showed, from Monty Ossenfort getting hired to Jonathan Gannon to the coordinators who had never held that post before. I pretty much called Jonathan Gannon the president with his cabinet. It's like he's the face, but there's a bunch of guys. The majority of guys in key positions had never held that position before. So it was really just proof of concept with the offense, proof of concept with how the defense showed up. We saw week one against your favorite team growing up, the Washington Commanders. They showed up and they played football with pretty much no talent on that side of the ball. Right. And they were Joshua Dobbs 2 fumbles away from potentially winning week one. So it happened right away, and it sustained pretty much through the majority of the year, even though their second halves were rarely better than their first until Kyler Murray came back. But now, as you mentioned, all that Stencil needs is talent, and it's much better than having talent and a head coach who didn't know what the hell he was doing. We've experienced that more than we'd like to share. Bo Brock, PHNX Cardinals, PHNX Sports, at Bo Brock on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner, and temporarily at Locked On AZ Cards solely. Please go to the YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals, hit that subscribe button.
It's so great that you're basically off Twitter. They threw you out. They just said these weak takes, we can't take any more of them.
Too good. Just embarrassing people. Just absolutely embarrassing people. Screw the 2FA. Let me just say that. I don't need to say that it's me after I say that it's me when I log in.
Right.
Please and thank you. Cardinals have made a handful of moves.
You're such an old man.
Heavy. I don't miss Bo interrupting me. That's for damn sure. Let's hit this
True factor. How dare you? You took the only person that's been just taken down by two-factor login. Unbelievable.
Well, they took it. Listen, I don't have time. We only have 30 minutes before Russ Jackson gets
Back
mad.
in my day, you had one password. You didn't need a symbol or anything. You just needed 4 letters.
You know what you should have is one follower, your mom. That's pretty much the only person who should love what you're doing on Twitter because she loves you unconditionally. Cardinals have made 5 real moves from the outside, bringing in new players. What does it mean? Is it enough? Is one of the players more underrated than he should be? Bo tweeted something out about that. I'm going to ask him about it. Alex Clancy, Bo Brock, Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by BetterHelp. It can be easy to ignore your social battery and spread yourself thin, especially, social gatherings after the holidays a couple months ago, or if you're overworked and, what's the right amount of socializing for you? How do you recharge? Maybe you thrive around people, or maybe you need some more alone time. I love my alone time, but Bo knows that. Therapy can give you the self-awareness to build a social life that doesn't drain your battery. And if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do, fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Find your social sweet spot with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Bo Brock, my nightmare, my Freddy Krueger nightmare is back. It's good to see you, man. We haven't done this in a while. Haven't done this since you went over to PHNX. I joined you guys a couple times. Good, nice setup over there. You guys do a great job reporting social, the social media, everything practice. You guys do a great job. Is that all I had to say? I know you sent me something to say. Is that all I had to say? Is there anything else you need me to lie about?
No, I was just waiting for the second shoe to drop. I thought you were going to say something. And you guys are all losers, and everybody knows it. And I don't know. I was.
No, Saul Goodman, Johnny's great. PHNX Suns are good. It's just one glaring issue over there. One thing, Bo, listen. I think that you and I were both on the same side here, thinking that the Cardinals were going to do a whole lot, massive splash signings for big money deals. There was kind of this realization, like right when legal tampering started, it's going to be next year, isn't it? They've got 30 mil still to spend. They brought in some support systems, a couple of rotational defensive linemen, one of whom you think maybe better than the other, and Bilal Nichols, I would assume, is the one that you're mentioning. I'll let you, discuss that. Sean Murphy-Bunting, who's won a Super Bowl, played meaningful snaps at corner to fill the outside CB2 role. They signed DeeJay Dallas, a stud special teamer and backup running back from Seattle, but no huge impact signings. Justin Jones, for me, the people that I trust, said that was one of the worst signings of legal tampering for the first couple days with the money attached and his actual performance. Yeah. But he's a great locker room guy. Coaches love him. Front office loves him. Everybody loves him. So sometimes you need players like that, especially as a rotational piece on a defensive line that was absolutely devoid of talent, especially at the end of the year. So kind of walk me through your thoughts through the first couple signings and where the Cardinals sit now, where they weren't sitting before making those signings.
Yeah, I mean, those who are pointing at us and saying, hey, the Cardinals, their worst signing was Justin Jones. And I mean, had they watched the Cardinals defensive line last season, like if they move forward the status quo, that's already, a strike against Monty Austinfort. But I tend to agree with you. I don't even know if next year is a time that you're going to see them spend money. I really don't. I just don't think that this is going to be a team that is going to in any way lean on free agency to bolster its roster. I think it's going to use it to fill in and elevate it and continue to raise the floor on it. But the stars of this organization are all going to come through the draft. They really are. We get lost in it because we want them to pursue these big names. And I'm sure they kind of monitored Christian Wilkins' market and they monitored the guard market. And then they saw the price tag on these guys. And I think that Monty Austinfort will never be a general manager to pay that much money because he understands the risk in that. I mean, if the Cardinals ever did what the Panthers did, which was reckless, was $153+ million at 2 guards. I think that as much as you're like, hey, I feel good about the left guard position more so than I did yesterday, it still is not the moves of a good organization. I mean, they still move where they have to figure it out. I know people don't feel comfortable with Elijah Wilkinson, but I just think that when you look at this crop, these 5 guys they brought in, they raised the floor on the defense, and they needed, especially that defensive line where they were starting XFL players on at that position, and they like to rotate, 4 to 5 guys in a game. And you bring in guys like Bilal Nichols and Justin Jones, who led the Bears, regardless of what his Pro Football Focus number looks like. He still had 10 TFLs and 17 quarterback carries to lead the team. I think that's a more important statistic than what his grade was. So you get those guys and they're playing 45 to 50% of the snaps. They can make an impact, and they can help open up rush lanes for an edge rush group that was silent the stretch run of the season. So I liked the additions of those guys. Are they like the game wreckers that you need at defensive tackle? No, but Byron Murphy II could be. Jerzon Johnny Newton could be. And I think that's where you could go to really find that piece. And then, Mac Wilson is somebody like people get scared off because of what the previous regime did with versatile players, positionless players. He played off the edge. He played off-ball linebacker. He didn't break the bank, similar contract to Kazir White. And he could, team up with Kazir White to actually be a modern-day linebacker, unlike what we've seen in a long time. So I like these moves. And to your point, Sean Murphy-Bunting, Super Bowl ring, played outside corner, which was a horrible position for the Cardinals. We had to endure Marco Wilson for 11 games last year. So I think they did a really good job in just kind of adding talent to the roster that wasn't there before.
Yeah, this is something where, especially Cardinals fans, media members too, are going to have to completely rewire how you think, because Steve Keim never built to the draft.
Right.
Ever. Not once. I think his best draft pick was trading up for Budda Baker because he knew there was a guy that was going to be good, and he traded up the top of the second round and got him. You can't say Kyler Murray because he ran on the post, running number 1 overall. So what Monty Osborne's going to do, I kind of call it the shrubbery around the rose bush is what these signings are going to be. And then what's going to be sexy? Probably Marvin Harrison Jr. What's going to be sexy? DJ Ojulari in his second year. What's going to be sexy? Paris Johnson Jr., who your co-host Johnny Venerable reported that they're going to keep him on the right side.
Yeah.
That's an interesting kind of brain pretzel for me, because it's like, if his traditional position is on the left side and the left tackle position is still one of need with DJ Humphries, with his ACL, and Kelvin Beachum is going to be the swing tackle. He's going to be that depth guy. And I know they signed a couple more offensive linemen for depth, but that's something that kind of thwarts my mind at this point. I know free agency just started, so maybe they're going to target a guy. But, Bo, you talk about the guards that Carolina signed to all that money.
Mm-hmm.
Many times, let's say even 50% of the time, big money offensive linemen don't pan out.
Right.
And that is a lot of money to throw at somebody. Like, say they wanted to say, you know what? We're going to take almost everything that the Cardinals have, and they're going to throw it at Tyron Smith. And they're going to put him on the left side, and then they're going to draft the Barton kid out of Duke. They're going to play him at left guard, and this is going to be the strength. And then Tyron Smith plays 3 games.
Right.
And then all your money's gone.
Right.
So that's kind of like, that whole thing kind of confused me. As we're going into free agency with offensive linemen still out there, like, is that a position that they're targeting, you think, to be able to spend a lot of money at, or are they going to kind of keep it in-house?
I think it's a position that they're targeting. They're always tweaking. We've heard that this organization, they liked what they saw from that group last year. It was a pretty consistent group,
especially the right side.
Yeah, the right side was great. You love the tag team duo of Will Hernandez and Paris Johnson Jr. and Yelda Froholt was a breath of fresh air after all the issues at center last couple of seasons with Rodney Hudson, and they hadn't had a consistent center play since Lyle Sendeline. But then the left side, Wilkinson's poor play affected negatively DJ Humphries, and it was an issue, right? But it was one of the relatively more consistent position groups to the offensive line. But to hear the organization say, yeah, we're not content with this. We need to get better. This is a team that is going to be kind of hell-bent on finding their next franchise left tackle. And I know Johnny said right tackle for Paris Johnson Jr., and I think that was the expectation, whenever it was at end of February. And we'll see. I mean, I think things can change. Like, I bet you the organization wants to continue the continuity with him continuing to work out and hone his craft in on that side and be the Cardinals version of Lane Johnson, who's in Philadelphia, so consistent on the right side tackle, and they understand the value of that position. But the only way that works is if you find somebody that can consistently stay on the left side. So that's a big thing that they're going to have to figure out, but they're going to be hell-bent on kind of finding the solutions to that. And like, unfortunately, I think the way the guard market played out when they probably monitored, it was still, okay, they're going to find this year's version, hopefully, of a Yelda Froholt, a Elijah Wilkinson, and, they can go those two directions. One could be Wilkinson and one could be Froholt. If you find a Froholt, you find a decent, starting caliber guy at left guard, but then you got to figure out the tackle. And I think Monty hasn't spent any money on a tackle so far in a sample size year and whatever change it is now. And I don't think he's going to, because the prices are too damn high. He'll probably look at 27 or moving up to fill that void if Marvin Harrison Jr. is not there, if he is there at 4.
Yeah, and we'll talk about, the other needs quickly on the other side. I kind of want to dive into the draft for a couple minutes also. Because that's the thing. It's like, what a terrible draft to have Marvin Harrison Jr. there with Joe Alt right there too. When the Cardinals have their bookend guy, they'd be able to set and forget on the left side. So we'll talk about that. Bo Brack, PHNX Cardinals, former, wet blanket of Locked On Cardinals, now moved on to be somebody else's problem, joining me. He pretty much, this is, I got one more segment, so hopefully I can get through it. What other needs do the Cardinals have? Does Bo agree with me that they need to double down on tight end, running back as well, and for a backup to keep this locomotive moving if injuries do happen in 2024? Alex Clancy with guest Bo Brack. We'll be right back. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by the Game Time app. Bo's going to get giddy with this because I almost asked him about these tickets before I bought them. I bought my Green Day, Smashing Pumpkins, and Rancid tickets for Chase Field on the Game Time app. And the coolest part about the Game Time app, first of all, it's in your fingertips. There are flash sales, flash deals. You can buy tickets up until an hour after an event, whether it be comedy shows, musicals, basketball games, baseball games, hockey, football, whatever it may be. Game Time's got you covered. The coolest part about the Game Time app, though, is say you're like, man, okay, that's in my price range. Let me see. So I click on that. It gives you the vantage point of what you'll be seeing from those seats in that venue. So you don't have to guess about what it's going to look like and feel like you got ripped off because you're sitting behind a damn pole or something. Game Time's got you covered, man. They take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Final segment here. One of the benefits of the Cardinals kind of sitting on their hands for the last day, which is a long time, during this first week of free agent frenzy, is I can bring on a couple guys here. Bo Brack joining me today, former host, obviously, good friend of mine. Donnie Druin from Sports Illustrated, writing for the Cardinals, going to join me tomorrow. This is the time where we can kind of take a halftime beat and kind of slow down everything that was experienced up until this point. So, I mean, I give the Cardinals a B, give them a B+, knowing exactly where they are, right? It's not about flash signings. It's not about Christian Wilkins. It's not about anything like that. It's about what's best for the Arizona Cardinals, running their own race and positioning themselves for sustained success, something that the last regime was unable to do. Bo, I've said that I think the Cardinals need to bring in a backup pass-catching tight end. It's not the biggest need, okay? They need a corner. They need pass rush ×2. They need probably another inside linebacker. Obviously, the left side of the offensive line we just discussed. A tight end and a backup quarterback who can plug and play. At this point, with the fragility of this team, injuries cannot be the reason you halt. And especially with this system that Joshua Dobbs ran, you need a guy who can just come in and be 60 to 70% of what the starter is. And I think tight end specifically, Mike Gesicki was a name that I had in mind where it's like, it's not going to be the best blocking guy, but he's going to be low impact. And I know he signed elsewhere with Cincinnati, but he's a guy that can be plug and play for Trey McBride if Trey McBride were to get hurt. Is that a position you think they should target, or is this one something where it's like, you've got a couple guys, Swain, you got Isaiah Hodgins. It's like, is that going to be enough?
Yeah, I mean, look, they love Higgy Bear. They love Elijah Higgins, the converted wide receiver to tight end. And he made some, big catches in a couple games, in Pittsburgh and in Philadelphia, and I think again in against Seattle. I think there's a lot of belief in there, and they love Jeff Swain before he suffered an injury, and what he brought, what transcended the playing field. Obviously, they make a big impact there, but yeah, I don't know if they're going to. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, if they do double-digit selections in the draft, I wouldn't be surprised if they go out and maybe target a guy like Theo Johnson out of Penn State. But I just don't think that they're going to go like they've got their guy in Trey McBride and then Higgins, and then I don't know how much they'll invest in the tight end position. I think they'd be pretty content. And then what was the other position? It was
backup quarterback.
Backup quarterback. They love Clayton Tune. In Indianapolis at the combine, I was able to get some insight. Like they really like, his makeup. They appreciated that he was able to kind of fall on the grenade a little bit in Cleveland. But they understand that performance from Cleveland, like there has to be a significant jump from there. But they believe that he's the guy that's going to put in the work. And it's not to say that they're not going to bring in some competition, but it's not going to be in the form of, I know, and you mentioned like a name that's already been signed and accounted for. Like they're not going to go get a Jacoby Brissett, Gardner Minshew, or whoever is on the market. So I just don't think that it's in the cards. I mean, I think that they'll continue to look at the offensive line. They'll look at the defensive secondary. It's a pretty full pass rush group that I think that they'll add in the draft if they're going to upgrade there. But other than that, I don't view any other spots. They got to add, maybe an extra wide receiver depending on what's going to happen with Hollywood Brown. It seems like that one domino we were waiting for in Calvin Ridley to kind of fall will probably, Hollywood could be next to sign somewhere.
Yeah. And listen, we got 2 minutes here. So it's paralysis by analysis is going to be removed from this. So that's probably good for you. Yeah. Say the Cardinals get a call from Minnesota, Denver, the Raiders. What is that? 12, 13, 14? Yeah. 11, 12, 13, 12, 13, 14. 3 quarterbacks are off the board, and J.J. McCarthy is there, or Jaden Daniels is there. For those that don't think J.J. McCarthy is going to go in the top 10, welcome to the conversation. Yeah. And when you say top 10, that could very well be top 4. If you are Monty Ossenfort and you get offered a Trey Lance package to move back to 12, say it's 2 firsts, this year's second, and next year's third, to move back to 12. You're passing on Marvin Harrison Jr. You're passing on every top position player, by the numbers at this point, by the grades, to move back and kick this can positively down the road with draft capital. Are you sticking and picking, or are you trading back?
Sticking and picking. I think, they have 6 picks in the first top 100 picks. Like they're not devoid of draft capital. They've got plenty of it. And, I think you don't want to become a draft hoarder, draft pick hoarder. And I think that when you have a player the caliber of Marvin Harrison Jr. and you're in a position and he falls in your lap at 4th overall, you take him. And, it's tantalizing. I see it for sure. You're always thinking about, your next move. But I think about like Danny H-back for the Celtics, outside of that big 3-year, like he was always collecting assets, but he really never cashed them in. And I think when you have a bunch of assets already and you're in a position, you've got a true asset in the 4th overall pick and potentially the best non-quarterback available, you take them.
Yeah. I had Trevor Sickma, one of our boys over. He's the lead draft expert over at Pro Football Focus. Now started with us here at Locked On and has gone on to great things. He's my best friend. He's really probably my best friend. Better friends with me than Alex for sure. Yeah, you should see the text thread between me and him. He said to me on Monday, Marvin Harrison Jr. may be the highest graded player that he's ever graded.
I believe it.
Bonkers. But like that, and he's like, when you're in that line, you don't speak in platitudes, especially with everything at stake, with all of these things that people are watching, all of these writers, all these ratings, everything that people are, going to your information as, as the gospel, or so to speak. It's like, that shocked me. I was like, that's a big deal. So, I mean, Here's the thing, man. You get a 30.5 Pro Football Focus rating as a co-host, I think. As a guest, like 18.5. Because it's at least there's no lovability. It's just listen, we can talk after we get off here. And maybe I can give you some pointers.
We can't. We could. It's possible, but I'm pulling the cord.
Yeah, I know. Bo Brock, PHNX Cardinals, they do a great job over there. Former host of Locked On Cardinals, went over to be with Johnny over there, Saul Goodman. You guys do a great job over there. Thanks for joining me, man. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, man. It's been far
Alex
too long.
Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. I have a new tagline. You ready for this? Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Without you, there is no me every day. Just keep that in mind. I will talk to you now.